Every civilization begins with a story. And for China, a civilization spanning over 5,000 years, these stories reach back before written history, shaping how people understood the world, life, virtue, and destiny. Today, we're going on a journey through the mythological landscape of China. And this isn't just about ancient tales. These myths are alive. They still shape how Chinese people think, celebrate, and understand themselves. Over the next hours, we'll explore 7 interconnected threads of Chinese mythology. Think of them as different layers in a tapestry, each one adding color and texture to the whole. First, we begin at the very beginning, creation myths. Pangu opening heaven and earth, Nüwa mending the sky, and then the age of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, when mythology turns into proto-history. Second, we enter the Daoist cosmos, a divine bureaucracy as intricate as any earthly government, the 3 pure ones, the Jade Emperor, the Queen Mother of the West, and the 10 kings of hell. Third, we explore the classic of mountains and seas, the Shenhezheng, a mythical geography that maps the Chinese imagination. Fourth, Buddhism arrives. We'll meet Guanyin, the bodhisattva of compassion, and Mizu, the sea goddess who embodies devotion and protection. Fifth, we descend to popular religion, Sun Wukong the Monkey King, Guanyin the warrior god, and the countless local deities that bring myth down to street level. Sixth, we step back and see how these 5 systems influenced each other, the remarkable syncretism that makes Chinese religion so adaptive and alive. And finally, we ask the big question: what do all these myths tell us about Chinese cultural values? What are the strengths and wisdom? And what are the shadows, the superstitions and rigidities we should acknowledge? When you understand Chinese mythology, you understand China, from classical poetry to modern cinema, from business ethics to family obligations. These stories are woven into the fabric. So let's begin. Let's go back to the very beginning. Let us begin with the very first act of creation in one of the best-known Chinese myths, the story of Pangu opening heaven and earth. Before there was a world, there was only chaos. Not chaos as in noise and violence, but a kind of undifferentiated, swirling potential. Chinese texts describe it as a vast, dark egg, where heaven and earth were mixed together like yolk and white. Inside this cosmic egg lay a giant being, Pangu, asleep. He slept for an unimaginably long time. Some stories say 18,000 years. During that time, the forces of yin and yang, of light and darkness, slowly separated and balanced themselves around him. Eventually, Pangu awoke. He found himself trapped, pressed from all sides by this tight shell of chaos. Instinctively, he wanted space. He wanted a world. So he took up a mighty axe and struck the shell. With a crack that shook the unborn universe, the egg split. The lighter, clearer parts, the yang, rose up to become the heavens. The heavier, murkier parts, the yin, sank down to become the earth. But at first, heaven and earth were still close together, threatening to collapse back into chaos. Pangu planted his feet on the earth and pushed the sky up with his hands. Every day he grew taller, and every day heaven and earth moved slightly farther apart. Some versions say that for 18,000 years, Pangu grew 10 feet taller each day, while the earth grew thicker and the sky higher by the same measure. When this long work was done, the world had the structure we recognize: sky above, earth below, and space in between. Only then did Pangu finally rest and die. His death is not an ending, but a transformation. His breath became the wind and clouds. His voice became thunder. His left eye became the sun and his right eye became the moon. His blood flowed out as rivers and seas. His muscles became the rich soil. His bones and teeth turned into rocks and minerals. His hair and beard became the stars in the sky, the plants, the forests. In some versions, even the fleas and parasites on his body become the animals and humans of the world. This is a very specific way of imagining creation. The world is not something that a distant god speaks into being with a word. It is literally the body of a cosmic being. Philosophically, that implies a radical kind of interconnectedness. Mountains are not just cold stone, they are the bones of the first being. Rivers are not just water, they are the blood of the Creator. To harm the natural world is, in a sense, to harm a living ancestor. Over the centuries, scholars have debated the origin of the Pangu story. The earliest written versions appear in the 3rd century, associated with a Daoist author named Xu Zheng. Some researchers suspect influences from southern minority cultures like the Miao or Yao, or even parallels with Indian myths about cosmic eggs. But whether or not Pangu was always central to early Chinese cosmology, the story as received carries strong Daoist flavor. It presents the world as an unfolding of yin and yang, and Pangu himself as a kind of personification of the Tao's creative activity. It also expresses an attitude toward sacrifice. Creation is not free. The cosmos exists because a great being gives his entire body for it. That theme, the idea that order and life are bought with the self-giving of a primal figure, will quietly echo later in stories of culture heroes who suffer or die to bring food, medicine, or knowledge to humanity. If Pangu is the architect who separates heaven and earth, Nüwa is the engineer and artist who repairs the damage and fills the world with living beings. In many traditions, Nüwa is depicted as a goddess with the upper body of a woman and the lower body of a serpent or dragon. This hybrid form links her both to human society and to the older, wilder powers of nature. One branch of the myth says that after Pangu's work of separation, the world was still empty. Nüwa felt lonely walking the earth, so she began to create humans. She scooped up yellow clay from the riverbank and shaped it into small figures. With care and patience she molded heads, limbs, and faces, and then blew her breath into them. They came alive, stood up, and began to walk. These carefully crafted figures became nobles and scholars. But crafting each person by hand took too long. So she took a rope, dipped it into the mud, and flicked it. Each drop that splashed to the ground became a person as well, but formed more roughly. Some storytellers say these became the common folk. In this way, the myth playfully explains social difference. Some are laboriously sculpted, others are splashed into being. Another major branch of the Nüwa myth deals not with creation, but with repair. In this version, there is a great catastrophe. Two powerful beings, often named Gonggong and Zhuangshu, fight and shatter one of the pillars of heaven. The sky tilts. The earth cracks. Fire spirits roam freely, burning forests and towns. Flood waters pour out and cover the land. Monsters escape from the boundaries that once held them. Seeing humanity on the brink of extinction, Nüwa is filled with sorrow and determination. She decides that if no one else will save the world, she will. First, she searches the world for 5 colored stones: red, yellow, blue, white, and black. These colors correspond to the 5 phases in Chinese thought: fire, earth, water, metal, and wood, and to directions and elements of the cosmos. She builds a great furnace and melts the stones into a glowing, multicolored paste. Then she climbs to the highest place she can find and smears this liquid fire across the torn sky, sealing the cracks. Some storytellers say this is why the sunset sometimes glows with many colors, or why clouds can be tinged with rainbow shades. Next, she finds a giant turtle, cuts off its 4 legs, and uses them as pillars to hold up the corners of heaven. Here we see another echo of ancient symbolism. In many cultures, the turtle is an image of stability and cosmic support. In this Chinese version, it literally holds up the sky. Nüwa then stops the raging fires and drains the floods, bringing the elements back into balance. Only after all this work does the world become habitable again. Taken together, these Nüwa stories give her multiple roles: mother of humanity, cosmic engineer, and savior. She does not only create, she repairs, maintains, and protects. There is also an important gender dimension. In a tradition where later social structures become quite patriarchal, one of the earliest divine figures is a woman who literally holds the world together. That leaves a deep imprint on cultural imagination. The idea that the feminine is not weak or secondary but foundational. Philosophically, Nüwa's actions model responsibility. When the sky cracks, she does not wait for someone else. She takes on the burden. She gathers resources, does the difficult and painful work, and restores order. That attitude, seeing a problem and, bu tian, patching the sky, becomes a metaphor for moral behavior. When something breaks in society, good people repair it. Now, if Pangu and Nüwa belong to the mythic time of cosmic beginnings, the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors belong to the dawn of human civilization. They stand at the blurry boundary between myth and history. The details vary from text to text, but one influential list of the 3 sovereigns names Fuxi, Shennong, and the Yellow Emperor, Wangdi. These figures are not just kings. They are culture bringers, beings who introduce fundamental skills and institutions. Let us start with Fuxi. Fuxi is sometimes depicted with a human upper body and a serpent or dragon lower body, intertwined with Nüwa. In some images, they hold compass and square, symbols of order and measurement. Legends credit Fuxi with teaching humans how to fish with nets, how to hunt systematically, and how to domesticate animals. He is also said to have introduced marriage rules, turning chaotic relationships into stable family structures. But perhaps his most profound gift is the trigrams, the bagua. According to tradition, Fuxi studied the patterns of the heavens above and the markings of the earth below. He watched how animals moved, how water flowed, how thunder rolled. From this observation, he abstracted 8 basic symbols, 3 line figures, some lines broken, some unbroken. These 8 trigrams, heaven, earth, thunder, wind, water, fire, mountain, and lake, represent fundamental patterns of change. Combined, they form the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching, the Book of Changes. One story says that Fuxi received the trigrams by seeing the pattern on the back of a dragon horse that emerged from the Yellow River, or on the shell of a divine turtle rising from the Luo River. In either case, the idea is that the deep structure of reality can be read from nature itself, if one knows how to look. That connection between observation, pattern, and meaning is central to Chinese thought. It encourages people to see the world as intelligible, changing, but not random. After Fuxi comes Shennong, literally, the divine farmer. Shennong teaches humans how to plow fields, how to plant grains, how to store food. Agriculture replaces a purely hunting-gathering life. Settled communities, villages, and later cities become possible. He is also the great herbalist. Stories say he personally tasted hundreds of plants, sometimes being poisoned several times in a single day, to discover which were edible, which were medicines, and which were deadly. One famous tale describes Shennong sitting beneath a crystal-clear kettle of boiling water. Leaves from a nearby tree fall into the water. He drinks it, finds it refreshing and stimulating, and thus discovers tea. Another story has him testing a particular plant, getting violently ill, and then finding another herb that cures him. In mythic form, these tales honor the long, dangerous trial and error through which traditional medicine emerged. In Shennong's figure, we see a different kind of sacrifice, not cosmic dismemberment like Pangu, but daily, bodily risk in the service of knowledge. The 3rd sovereign in this list is Wangdi, the Yellow Emperor. Wangdi is often treated as the ancestor of the Han Chinese people. His reign is associated with the invention of writing, of certain musical instruments, of carts and boats, of clothing and weapons. Under him, the loose cultural achievements of earlier ages become organized into something like a state. In myth, Huangdi defeats rebellious forces like Kaiyu, thus establishing political order. In later philosophy, he often appears as the model of a sage king who governs according to cosmic principle. Whether or not there was a historical Huangdi, the image of the Yellow Emperor serves as a rallying point for ethnic and cultural identity. To call oneself a descendant of Huangdi is to connect one's family story to a larger civilizational narrative. Putting these three together, Fuxi, Shennong, and Huangdi, we see an evolution, from basic survival skills, to agriculture and medicine, to organized governance and technology. Myth compresses centuries of human development into three symbolic figures. After the three sovereigns come the five emperors, figures like Xiaohao, Zhuangshu, Yao, Shun, and sometimes Yu the Great. These emperors are less about inventing technology and more about modeling virtue. Their stories read almost like Confucian case studies. Among them, Yao and Shun are especially important. Yao is portrayed as a wise and humble ruler who cares deeply for the people. When the time comes to choose a successor, he does something remarkable. He does not automatically pass the throne to his own son. Instead, he searches for the most virtuous and capable person. He finds Shun, a man of lowly birth but exceptional character. Shun's father is cruel, his stepmother and half-brother abusive. Yet Shun responds with patience and filial piety. In one story, his family tries to kill him multiple times, by trapping him in a burning granary, by throwing him into a well, but he survives each attempt and continues to treat them with respect. Yao hears of this and concludes, if someone can remain upright in such a difficult family, perhaps he can remain upright on the throne. Shun is tested in various administrative roles. When he proves able and just, Yao yields the throne to him. This narrative sends a clear message: virtue outranks bloodline. The best leader is not necessarily the son of the current one, but the person whose character and actions align with moral principle. Later Confucian thinkers use this as a model for the ideal of meritocracy. Shun, once on the throne, continues this pattern. He too seeks out capable ministers, rewarding virtue wherever he finds it. His reign becomes a symbol of harmony between heaven and man. Then we have Yu the Great, often associated with the later Xia dynasty. His claim to fame is the taming of the Great Flood. Before Yu, his father Guan tried to stop the floodwaters by building huge dams and hoarding a kind of magical self-expanding soil. The plan failed. The waters broke through the dams and caused even greater destruction. Yu takes a different approach. Instead of fighting the water head-on, he studies its behavior. He spends years walking the riverbanks, observing where the water wants to go. Then he organizes massive projects to dredge channels, dig canals, and open paths that guide the waters back to the sea. The difference is crucial. Guan tries to block nature with brute force. Yu works with nature's tendencies, redirecting them. His success symbolizes a deeper idea. The wise ruler transforms problems not by sheer suppression, but by understanding underlying patterns and adjusting structures. Myth says Yu was so dedicated that as he traveled the land, 3 times he passed by his own home and did not go in, because the work was not yet done. In some versions, he only ever hears his child cry from outside the door. He never stops. This extreme image is not meant as a literal instruction, but as a moral exaggeration, a way of saying that true responsibility sometimes requires painful personal sacrifice. Eventually, Yu succeeds in taming the floods, earning the mandate to rule. In many lists, he is counted among the 5 emperors or as the founder of the first dynasty. So in Part 1, from Pangu to Nüwa, from the 3 sovereigns to the 5 emperors, Chinese mythology sketches a grand arc. First, the cosmos itself takes shape. Chaos differentiates into heaven and earth. A giant being's body becomes the world. Then, a compassionate goddess repairs the broken sky, creates humanity from clay, and models the idea that when the world cracks, someone must step up to mend it. Next, culture heroes appear to teach basic survival skills, agriculture, medicine, and patterns of the universe. They discover that reality has structure, that change can be understood, and that this understanding can guide human action. Finally, virtuous rulers demonstrate that political power, at least in the ideal, should follow character rather than pure heredity. They show that a ruler's task is not only to command, but to align human society with cosmic order, to tame floods without defying nature, to choose successors based on integrity, and to see their role as stewardship rather than possession. In this way, the myths of Pangu, Nüwa, the 3 sovereigns, and the 5 emperors are not random stories. Together, they form a philosophy in narrative form, a vision of a universe where creation is relational, where care and sacrifice sustain the world, and where human civilization is legitimate only when it resonates with deeper patterns of harmony and justice. Now that we have seen how the early myths move from cosmic creation to the birth of civilization, we can ask a deeper question: what lies behind all of this? For Taoism, the ultimate answer is the Tao, the way that gives birth to heaven and earth, and to all beings. But Taoism does not leave this as an abstract concept only. Over time, it personifies the highest principles of reality into 3 great deities known as the 3 Pure Ones, the Sanqing. These 3 are not gods in the sense of quarreling personalities. They are embodiments of stages of the Tao's self-unfolding. The first is the Jade Pure One, Yuqing, known as Yuanxi Tianjun, the heavenly worthy of the primordial beginning. He represents the Tao before form, pure, indifferentiated, the source from which all universes arise. In images, he often sits alone in the highest heaven, robed in pale colors, utterly calm, holding a scepter or scroll that symbolizes original wisdom. The second is the Supreme Pure One, Shangqing, known as Lingbao Tianjun, the heavenly worthy of numinous treasure. If Yuanxi is the source, Lingbao is the pattern. He embodies the cosmic principles, the laws and structures by which the universe maintains order. Daoist texts associate him with scriptures, rituals, and the mystical side of Daoist practice. He guards the treasures of the Tao, not gold and jewels, but teachings, methods, and inner technologies that help beings align with the way. The third is the Grand Pure One, Taiching, known as Daoda Tianjun, the heavenly worthy of the way and its virtue. In many traditions, this third Pure One is directly identified with Laozi, the semi-legendary author of the Tao Te Ching. Here, the Tao is not only source and principle, but also teaching, the wisdom that comes down into the human world in the form of concise, paradoxical verses about simplicity, humility, and naturalness. So together, the 3 Pure Ones express 3 movements: the Tao as origin, the Tao as structure, and the Tao as guidance. In Taoist temples, you will often see the 3 Pure Ones seated in the main hall, high above other deities. Worshippers may not always know the abstract theology, but the visual message is clear. Above all the gods of wind and rain, wealth and war, there is a higher order, a principled unity. This has ethical implications. It suggests that even the gods themselves are accountable to something beyond them, to the Tao's demand for balance, harmony, and integrity. Below the 3 Pure Ones, Taoist cosmology and Chinese popular religion place another figure who is far more familiar in daily life: the Jade Emperor, the Yuhong Daddy. Where the 3 Pure Ones are distant and almost philosophical, the Jade Emperor is concrete. He is the ruler of heaven, presiding over a court of gods in a structure that mirrors the imperial bureaucracy of China. Interestingly, the Jade Emperor was not always the supreme god. Early Daoist texts often focus more on the three pure ones or on local deities. Over time, especially during the Song dynasty, the Jade Emperor's status is elevated through both official state rituals and grassroots devotion. One popular story describes the Jade Emperor's own path to divinity. In this tale, he begins as a mortal prince of a small kingdom. Rather than indulge in luxury, he devotes himself to virtue and practice. He rules justly, cares for the poor, and meditates in mountain retreats. After death, he ascends through many stages of the heavenly hierarchy, slowly gaining responsibility, until finally he is appointed as ruler of the celestial realm. The moral is straightforward. Even the highest god of the visible pantheon is not arbitrary. His authority is earned through cultivation and merit. In the cosmology that later crystallizes, the Jade Emperor governs three domains: heaven, earth, and the underworld. He delegates tasks to countless officials: gods of thunder and lightning, gods of the stars, gods of particular rivers and mountains, gods of professions, and gods of households. Every village temple that enshrines a local deity, a city god, an earth god, a goddess of childbirth, or a patron of scholars, is understood as part of this system. The local god may feel very close and personal, but ultimately, they are considered subordinates in the Jade Emperor's court. This heavenly bureaucracy reflects the earthly one. In imperial China, mandarins file reports upwards, and edicts flow downwards. Likewise, in the spiritual imagination, local gods report local conditions to the Jade Emperor, and he issues orders back down. There is even the idea that the Jade Emperor himself can be replaced after enormous cycles of time, tens of thousands of years, if another being cultivates sufficiently great virtue. So heaven is hierarchical, but not frozen. It is a meritocracy of spirits. This framework reinforces a key message: power is a responsibility, subject to evaluation. It mirrors the Confucian notion that an emperor on earth holds the mandate of heaven only as long as he governs justly. When he becomes corrupt, the mandate can pass to someone more virtuous. At the popular level, the Jade Emperor is also a figure you can pray to in times of crisis. Temple murals sometimes show him seated on a throne, flanked by ministers, while petitioners kneel below. People may write petitions, burn them so that the smoke carries their words up, or have spirit mediums convey their requests. Thus, the Jade Emperor functions in two ways at once: as a theological bridge between the impersonal Tao and the many local gods, and as a personal patron whom ordinary people can approach, especially during New Year rituals or major life events. Alongside this masculine image of cosmic rulership, Chinese tradition preserves a powerful feminine counterpart, the Queen Mother of the West, Zhuangmu. Her story stretches back to very early times. In ancient oracle bone inscriptions and early texts, she appears as a fierce, almost terrifying goddess associated with plague and retribution, dwelling in rugged western mountains. She has tiger teeth and a leopard tail, and commands spirits and strange beasts. Over the centuries, especially by the Han Dynasty, her image softens and expands. She becomes the majestic sovereign of Mount Kunlun, the cosmic mountain in China's far west. Her palace is surrounded by a paradisal garden filled with rare birds, flowing streams, and most famously, the peaches of immortality. These peaches do not ripen every year. One tradition says, the trees in the front of the garden bear fruit once every 3,000 years, granting those who eat them long life and understanding of the way. The trees in the middle ripen every 6,000 years, giving the eater the ability to fly and remain eternally youthful. The trees at the back ripen only once every 9,000 years, and a single peach can make someone as long-lived as heaven and earth. In famous tales, Ziwingmu hosts peach banquets for gods and worthy mortals. One Han Emperor, Emperor Wu of Han, is said to have entertained her at his palace. She brings him peaches and, in some versions, instructions for attaining immortality. He eats the fruit, but ultimately fails to follow her teachings strictly, and therefore still dies like other men. The image of Ziwingmu holding a tray of peaches, or with peach branches adorning her headdress, became extremely popular in art. Paintings, carvings, and New Year prints show her as a regal woman sitting on a throne, often accompanied by attendants and mythical beasts. Symbolically, she represents several things at once. First, she embodies longevity and immortality. To approach her is to seek freedom from sickness and aging, not through raw power, but through alignment with celestial timing. Second, she represents the Western paradise, a spiritual direction. West is the direction of the setting sun, associated with endings, transitions, and realms beyond ordinary human society. Third, she stands as a reminder that the feminine principle, yin, is not merely passive. It holds the secrets of life extension, intuition, and the cyclical rhythms of nature. In some stories, Ziwingmu visits deserving rulers to test them. She may appear unexpectedly at a feast, or in a dream, offering a gift that is both opportunity and trial. Those who are greedy or arrogant fail the test. Those who are humble and clear-sighted gain wisdom, even if they do not literally become immortal. Within Daoist liturgy, she is also invoked as an overseer of female immortals and as a protector of women. Her cult offers a space where female spiritual power is explicitly recognized. So, if the Jade Emperor represents structured authority and administration, the Queen Mother of the West represents the other pole, wild mountain transcendence that has been tamed into a gracious, nurturing form without losing its depth. Together, they illustrate how the cosmic order needs both firm hierarchy and generous nourishment. We have looked at the highest heavens. Now let us descend to the deepest courts of the underworld. In Chinese imagination, the afterlife is not a single place of reward or punishment. It is a complex system of courts and hells, overseen by the 10 kings of hell, the Shidian Yanjun. This system evolved over centuries, blending Buddhist ideas of karma and hell realms with Daoist and popular notions of celestial bureaucracy. Texts like the Jade Record in the late imperial period give highly detailed descriptions: 10 courts, multiple major hells, and many smaller ones, each with specific functions and punishments. When a person dies, their soul does not simply go straight to heaven or reincarnation. According to popular belief, they first appear before the first court, ruled by King Qingwang. Here, a mirror of retribution is said to reveal their entire life in perfect detail. No lie, no self-deception can survive this mirror. The first court reviews fundamental matters such as filial piety. Did you care for your parents? Did you respect your elders? If the soul's record is good, it may receive a relatively light path ahead. If not, it is sent on to other courts for punishment and correction. Each subsequent court deals with different categories of wrongdoing: violence, theft, sexual misconduct, deceit, corruption, and so on. For example, one court may focus on those who exploited others for money, subjecting them to hells where they are crushed by heavy weights or forced to climb mountains of knives. Another court punishes slanderers and gossipers by pulling out their tongues, dramatizing the idea that words can wound deeply. Punishments are graphic and theatrical, being boiled in cauldrons, frozen in ice, cut apart and reassembled. But these torments are not usually depicted as eternal. They are part of a process of moral balancing. After passing through multiple courts and serving time in corresponding hells, the soul eventually reaches the 10th court, ruled by King Lunwei, the king of rebirth. Here, the soul's punishments formally end. The ledger is, in theory, balanced. The kings decide what form of reincarnation the soul merits. Perhaps rebirth as an animal for serious evildoers, as a human with heavy suffering for mixed deeds, or in better circumstances for those whose virtues outweigh their sins. Some narratives identify one of the kings, King Yanluo of the Fifth Court, with the famous historical judge Bao Zheng, known as Justice Bao. According to these stories, Justice Bao serves as a judge in the human world by day, and in the netherworld by night. This identification ties the underworld directly to cherished ideals of human justice. The message is, the same fairness people hope for in earthly courts also exists, in an even more perfect form, after death. The Ten Kings system shows how thoroughly the bureaucratic imagination permeates Chinese religion. Heaven has departments and officials. Earth has magistrates and clerks. The underworld has judges, scribes, guards, and record-keepers. At the same time, it dramatizes karma in a very tangible way. Every action, thought, and intention is written down. No bribe can erase it. No social status can hide it. Such imagery has both psychological and social functions. Psychologically, it addresses the fear that injustice might go unanswered. If someone commits terrible acts and appears to escape punishment in this life, the Ten Kings assure people that the story is not over. Socially, it reinforces norms. Be filial, be honest, do not exploit others, do not abuse power. If moral education alone is not enough, the fear of facing King Qingwang's mirror or King Yanluo's court might push people to think twice. Of course, these images can also create anxiety and superstition, especially when used to control behavior rigidly. But at their heart, they express a profound conviction that the universe is morally structured, that deeds have consequences that extend beyond death, and that no one, not even emperors, stands above the law of cause and effect. So in Part 2, by looking at the three pure ones, the Jade Emperor, the Queen Mother of the West, and the 10 Kings of Hell, we see a complete vertical picture of the Daoist and popular Chinese cosmos. At the top, the three pure ones express the idea that reality is grounded in a principled source, a Tao that is at once origin, structure, and guidance. Below them, the Jade Emperor administers the universe as a merit-based ruler, mirroring and critiquing earthly emperors. His court of gods embodies the belief that power must be organized and that responsibility flows through ranks. Alongside him, the Queen Mother of the West reminds us that cosmic authority is not purely masculine or bureaucratic. It also has a wild, feminine, nurturing side, associated with longevity, mystery, and transformative encounters on the edges of the world. At the bottom, the 10 Kings of Hell ensure that moral accounts are settled. They show that the same kind of record-keeping that governs promotions and demotions in the imperial court also governs rewards and punishments in the afterlife. Together, these images teach that the cosmos is hierarchical, but not arbitrary, that authority is earned and answerable, that compassion and discipline coexist in the structure of heaven and hell, and that every action, from the highest throne to the smallest household, resonates through a vast, interconnected system. Now we turn from the heavens and underworld to something that looks, at first glance, more like a book of geography, the Shenheijing, the classic of mountains and seas. This text is unlike any other in the Chinese tradition. It is not a narrative poem or a philosophical treatise. It reads instead like a catalogue of mountains, rivers, regions, strange peoples, and even stranger creatures. Scholars debate its date and authorship. Parts of it may go back to the late Zhou or early Han period. It may incorporate local myths from many regions, the Central Plains, the South, the East Coast, and the Far West. Whatever its precise origins, by the time it reached its current form, it had become a kind of mythic atlas of the Chinese imagination. The book is divided into sections called the Classic of the Mountains and the Classic of the Seas. It describes, in order, mountain ranges to the east, south, west, and north, and then lands and waters beyond them. For each mountain, the text gives several details: its height, the direction in which it lies, what minerals are found there, what plants grow there, what animals live there, and which deity resides there. It often adds what sacrifices are appropriate if one wants that deity's favor. The effect is almost liturgical. Every peak, every river, has a spiritual profile. Let us look at a few of the creatures and places that appear in this classic. One of the most famous is the Jingwei bird. The story behind Jingwei goes like this: she was once the daughter of Emperor Yan. One day she went out to play in the eastern seas and tragically drowned. Instead of disappearing, her spirit transformed into a small bird with patterned feathers, called Jingwei. Filled with determination, Jingwei began to carry small twigs and stones in her beak from the mountains and drop them into the sea, vowing never to stop until she had filled it up. Rationally, this is impossible. But symbolically, Jingwei embodies a particular Chinese ideal: unyielding perseverance in the face of overwhelming odds. The bird's name even becomes an idiom for stubborn, righteous persistence. Another well-known creature is the teoti. In the Shenheijing, the teoti is described as a ferocious beast, all mouth and appetite, with an insatiable hunger. In ancient bronze art, especially ritual vessels, a stylized face motif is often identified as the teoti. Over time, this figure comes to symbolize greed and gluttony. The idea is that uncontrolled desire devours everything, even itself. To put a teoti mask on a food vessel is almost like a warning: be careful. Do not become like this. Then there are the one-legged beings, like the creature called Kui, a one-legged mountain spirit associated with thunder and rhythm. Some say Kui's movements created the first drumbeat. The Shenheijing also describes strange peoples: those with faces on their chests, those with backward feet, those who live on raw fish, or who never eat grain. These may be mythologized reports of distant tribes, transformed by fear, fascination, and imagination. To modern readers, these entries can sound like fantasy. But to ancient readers, they encode a sense that the world is much larger and stranger than the familiar central plains. Beyond each mountain range lie lands where the normal rules bend. The Shenheijing also preserves very old versions of myths we have already touched. Some sections mention Nüwa, the flood, and figures that later become part of the Pangu cycle. In that sense, it is a repository of early myth fragments that later traditions reorganize. Philosophically, the Shenheijing supports a worldview in which geography and spirituality are inseparable. Mountains are not only rock formations. They are seats of gods, sites of rituals, centers of power. Rivers are not just water. They are living flows with tempers and preferences. The way it lists offerings for each deity also reflects a logic of reciprocity. Humans acknowledge and feed the spirits. The spirits, in turn, protect travelers, grant safe passage, or bless the land. Some modern scholars suggest that the Shenheijing also functioned as a kind of mental map for travel and trade, a way of holding together fragmented knowledge about distant regions, routes, and resources, wrapped in sacred language. Whether or not it was ever used as a literal guide, its influence on Chinese imagination is huge. Later poets, painters, and novelists mine it for imagery. Contemporary fantasy writers still return to its beasts and lands for inspiration. In our overall story, the Shenheijing adds an important dimension. It shows that for ancient Chinese thinkers, the cosmos is not only a hierarchy of gods and judges, but also a vast, living landscape. To know the world is not just to know abstract principles. It is to know which mountain lies beyond which river, which spirit dwells in which valley, and how to move through that terrain respectfully. We now shift from cosmic geography to two figures who embody something more intimate: compassion and protection in everyday life, Guanyin and Mizu. Guanyin's story begins outside China, in Indian Buddhism, with the bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, the Lord who looks down and hears the cries of the world. In early Indian texts and art, Avalokiteshvara is usually male. He vows to remain in the cycle of rebirth until all beings are freed from suffering. He appears in the Lotus Sutra and other scriptures as a being who can take many forms to help people: a monk, a king, a child, a merchant, even a demon, depending on what the situation requires. When Buddhism travels into China, Avalokiteshvara comes with it. His name is translated in various ways, including Guanyin, the one who observes the sounds of the world. Over time, especially by the Tang and Song dynasties, his image begins to change. Chinese devotees increasingly imagine Guanyin in female form, a graceful figure in flowing white robes, often seated on a lotus, holding a vase of pure water and a willow branch. The vase symbolizes the nectar of compassion. The willow branch represents flexibility and healing. Her white clothing signifies purity and serenity. Why did this transformation happen? Scholars point to several reasons. First, Chinese culture already had powerful female divinities like Nüwa and the Queen Mother of the West. The idea of a compassionate, motherly protector fit well into existing patterns of reverence. Second, as Buddhism spread among laypeople, especially women, there was a strong emotional need for a figure who combined spiritual power with maternal tenderness. Guanyin became that figure. There are countless miracle stories. In one, a fisherman cries out to Guanyin when a storm threatens to capsize his boat. A radiant figure appears on the waves, calming the sea. He returns home safely and builds a shrine in gratitude. In another, a couple who long for children but cannot conceive pray to Guanyin. She appears in a dream, handing them a child. Soon afterward, the wife becomes pregnant. The child is seen as a gift from the bodhisattva. In yet another, Guanyin appears as a humble nun, offering medicine to the sick in a village. After the plague passes, the nun vanishes, and the villagers realize who she was. These stories may not be historically verifiable, but they reveal how people experience Guanyin, as someone who hears their cries, responds concretely, and often appears in ordinary disguises. On temple altars, Guanyin is sometimes flanked by two attendants: Shankai, a young seeker who represents the earnest student, and Longnu, the dragon girl, who symbolizes gratitude and the miraculous nature of awakening. Their presence turns the altar into a small drama of spiritual life: the seeker, the helper, the teacher. Chinese Buddhism also develops the idea of the 33 manifestations of Guanyin, different forms the bodhisattva can take to help beings in different realms, from gods and dragons to men and women, monks and kings. The underlying principle is profound: compassion is adaptive. It does not force one style on every situation. It listens, then appears in whatever way will be most effective. For many Chinese families, Guanyin becomes almost like a spiritual mother. Parents teach children that if they are afraid, they can call Guanyin's name. People place her image in their homes as a source of calm and moral reminder. Even outside explicitly Buddhist circles, Guanyin is revered. Daoist temples sometimes house her image. Folk shrines may include her alongside local deities. This shows how deeply she has been absorbed into the broader religious ecosystem. Now let us turn to Mizu, whose story begins not in mythic antiquity, but in historical time, with a real girl from the coast of Fujian. Her name was Lin Moniang. She was born in the late 10th century on Meizhou Island, into a family of fishermen or coastal officials, depending on the version. From a young age, she was known for her intelligence, quiet demeanor, and unusual spiritual sensitivity. One famous legend tells of a storm at sea. Her father and brothers are out fishing when a typhoon strikes. At home, Moniang falls into a trance. In her vision, she sees her father and brothers struggling in the waves. She bites her lip and holds one brother in each hand, pulling them toward shore spiritually. Her mother, seeing her in this state, thinks she is ill and tries to wake her. Startled, Monang's concentration breaks. One brother and her father are lost, but one brother survives. The story expresses both the power and the limits of human compassion. She can save, but not save all. In other tales, she learns Daoist techniques, heals the sick, and predicts weather. She becomes a kind of local shamanic figure. She dies young, some say at age 28, perhaps in another storm while attempting a rescue. After her death, fishermen and coastal people begin to report visions of her guiding ships through fog, calming storms, and appearing on mastheads as a red-robed woman. They build small temples to her, praying before sailing and giving thanks upon safe return. As maritime trade expands along the southeast coast and across to Taiwan and Southeast Asia, devotion to Mizu spreads with it. Over the centuries, imperial courts recognize her cult. She receives posthumous titles, each more exalted, from lady to princess to heavenly consort, and eventually to heavenly empress. Like Guanyin, she is a historical person whose image expands into a major goddess. But where Guanyin represents martial righteousness, Mizu represents protective compassion focused on the sea. In temples, Mizu is usually placed in the central shrine, wearing imperial robes and a crown. On either side stand her attendants, Qianlian, thousand-mile eyes, who can see far, and Shunfanger, favorable wind ears, who can hear prayers carried on the wind. This trio forms an image of divine perception. Nothing escapes their notice. No ship is too small. No voice is too faint. Mizu's cult is strongly community-oriented. Coastal towns often hold annual festivals on her birthday, with processions carrying her statue through the streets, accompanied by lion dances, opera performances, and offerings. The ritual both honors her and renews social bonds. Theologically, Mizu is a striking example of syncretism. In some temples, inscriptions describe her with Daoist titles and link her to celestial bureaucracies. In others, she stands near Buddhist figures like Guanyin or Kayasidagarba. Folk practice does not draw sharp doctrinal lines. It cares more about her efficacy and character than about which school she belongs to. Her story also embodies core Chinese values: filial piety, she risks herself to save her family; altruism, she protects strangers at sea; and local loyalty, she remains connected to her home region even as her cult spreads globally. Today, temples to Mizu can be found not only in Fujian and Taiwan, but across Southeast Asia and in Chinese diaspora communities around the world. For many overseas Chinese, she symbolizes a bridge between homeland and new shore, a mother who watches over them across oceans. Together, Guanyin and Mizu show how Chinese religion takes grand ideas, enlightenment, karma, cosmic compassion, and concretizes them as approachable, emotionally resonant figures. Through them, the vastness of Buddhist philosophy and the complexity of Daoist cosmology are translated into something as simple and powerful as a prayer whispered before a journey, or a candle lit for a sick child. Now let us spend some extended time with one of the most beloved and most psychologically rich figures in Chinese literature, Sun Wukong, the Monkey King. His story begins not with a human birth, but with a stone. On the mountain of flowers and fruit, there sits an enormous rock. For ages, it silently absorbs the essence of heaven and earth, the light of the sun and moon, the mist of clouds, the breath of wind. One day, the accumulated energy can no longer be contained. The rock cracks open, and out leaps a stone monkey. This origin sets the tone. Sun Wukong has no parents, no clan, no human lineage. He is pure natural energy, concentrated and personified. Quickly, he proves himself clever, bold, and utterly unafraid of taboo. He becomes king of the other monkeys after daring to jump through a waterfall and discovering a hidden cave that becomes their home. But eventually he faces a universal question: what about death? When he learns that even kings and sages must die, he refuses to accept it. He decides he will find a way to become immortal. So he leaves his mountain and travels across the seas in search of a teacher. After many failures, he meets a Daoist immortal who reluctantly takes him in as a disciple. There, Sun Wukong learns breathing exercises, meditation, spells, and the famous 72 transformations. He learns to change his form into birds, beasts, trees, even objects. He masters the cloud somersault, allowing him to travel vast distances in a single leap. This training is serious. It requires discipline and concentration. For a time, he behaves like a proper student. But the old habits of pride and impulsiveness remain. When he returns to his mountain, armed with these new powers, he becomes not only king of the monkeys, but a threat to the balance of heaven, earth, and underworld. Seeking a weapon equal to his abilities, he travels to the underwater palace of the Dragon King. None of the usual swords or spears satisfy him. Finally, the dragons bring out an enormous iron pillar, the Ruyi Jingu Bang, the compliant golden-hooped staff, originally used to measure the depth of the seas. Sun Wukong lifts it as if it were weightless. He discovers he can shrink it to the size of a needle and tuck it behind his ear, or expand it to pierce the clouds. The staff is a perfect symbol of his nature, infinitely flexible, playful, and incredibly destructive when misused. His exploits soon attract the attention of the heavenly court. At first, the Jade Emperor does not send armies. Instead, heaven tries a more subtle strategy: co-optation. Sun Wukong is invited to heaven and given a minor official post, Baimawen, keeper of the heavenly stables. For a brief period, he is satisfied. He tends the celestial horses diligently, enjoying the sense of status and belonging. But when he discovers that this is a lowly position and that other immortals laugh at him behind his back, his pride explodes. Furious, he smashes the stables, throws down his seal, returns to his mountain, and proclaims himself Qishan de Sheng, the great sage equal to heaven. This is the beginning of the havoc in heaven. Sun Wukong raids the peach garden, eating the peaches of immortality. He breaks into the palace of Laozi and consumes the pills of immortality. He drinks the celestial wine destined for high officials. Heaven sends armies after armies, but he defeats them all. The entire cosmic hierarchy is thrown into crisis by a single, untamed mind. At last, the Jade Emperor appeals to Buddha. Buddha does not respond with force. He proposes a bet. He extends his hand and says, "If you can leap out of my palm, I will recognize your title as great sage equal to heaven. If you cannot, you must submit." For Sun Wukong, this sounds laughably easy. He cloud somersaults as far as he can, past mountains, seas, stars, to what he believes is the edge of the universe. There he finds 5 immense pillars. To prove he was there, he writes his name on one, and leaves a rude mark on another. Triumphant, he returns and announces his victory. Buddha then opens his hand. On his palm are Sun Wukong's own scribbles. The 5 pillars were his fingers. The monkey never left the hand. This is one of the most famous metaphors in Chinese literature. It says, no matter how far the ego runs, it is still moving within a reality larger than itself. Buddha then traps Sun Wukong under a mountain, sealed by a talisman that combines the 5 elements: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. For 500 years, he cannot move. Those centuries are a kind of forced retreat. His strength remains, but he can do nothing with it. This long immobility becomes the precondition for a different kind of life. Eventually, the monk Tang Sanzang arrives on a pilgrimage to India to fetch Buddhist scriptures. Guanyin has arranged this journey as a way to spread the Dharma. She also arranges for Sun Wukong to be released, but under conditions. The monk removes the seal and frees him, but places on his head a magical circlet. When the monk recites a special chant, the band tightens, causing Sun Wukong intense pain. The circlet is another brilliant symbol. It is the discipline of practice, the sting of conscience, the constraints of moral responsibility. It hurts, but it protects both the world and the wearer. On the journey, Sun Wukong is joined by Zhu Baji, Pigzi, and Sha Wujing, Sandy. Each embodies a different aspect of human nature. Pigzi is lust and greed. Sandy is dull persistence and quiet endurance. Tang Sanzang himself represents purity and compassion, but also naivety. Many episodes dramatize Sun Wukong's struggle to integrate his power with wisdom. In the famous story of the White Bone Demon, a demon transforms into 3 different human shapes: a girl, a woman, and an old man, to deceive the monk and devour him. Each time, Sun Wukong sees through the illusion and kills the demon on the spot. Each time, to the monk's eyes, it looks like he has murdered innocent people. Tang Sanzang, horrified, scolds him and even banishes him for a time. Here the novel explores attention. Insight without communication can appear cruel, and compassion without insight can be easily deceived. Over the long journey, after countless battles with demons, intrigues with spirits, and moral tests, Sun Wukong gradually learns patience, loyalty, and obedience to a higher purpose. His wildness is not crushed, but refined. At the end, when the scriptures are successfully retrieved, he is granted Buddhahood, with the title, Victorious Fighting Buddha, a warrior whose energy now serves awakening. Traditional commentators often read Sun Wukong as the mind monkey, the restless, powerful mind that leaps from thought to thought. The headband is meditative restraint. The demons are inner afflictions. The pilgrimage is the path of cultivation. In folk religion, when people worship Sun Wukong, they are not just asking for a magical bodyguard. At a deeper level, they are aligning with the belief that even the wildest nature can be tamed and turned toward good. Now let us turn to another giant of the Chinese imagination, Guanyin, or Guangong, later deified as Guan Di. If Sun Wukong stands for rebellious energy seeking discipline, Guanyin stands for steadfast righteousness. Yi, loyalty to principle even at great cost. Historically, Guanyin was a general during the late Eastern Han and the Three Kingdoms period. But the Guanyin people worship today is shaped above all by the novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which weaves history and legend into a powerful moral epic. In the novel, we first meet him as a fugitive. He has killed a corrupt local official and is on the run. On the road, he encounters Liu Bei and Zhang Fei. Liu Bei is of imperial blood but lives in poverty, selling straw mats and shoes. Zhang Fei is a wealthy butcher and wine seller with a fierce temper. The three of them discover that they share the same goal: to bring order and justice back to a world torn by rebellion and corruption. In a peach garden, they perform a legendary oath. They vow to treat one another as brothers, to live and die together, not born on the same day, but willing to die on the same day. This oath of the peach garden becomes one of the core myths of Chinese loyalty. It defines Guan Yu's identity. He is a man who values sworn brotherhood above his own life. On the battlefield, Guan Yu is terrifying. He rides the horse Red Hare. He wields the green dragon crescent blade. He charges into battle ahead of the troops to challenge enemy generals in single combat. Stories tell of him defeating famous opponents in a single stroke. One of the earliest legendary feats is his slaying of Wukong. He accepts a cup of warm wine, vows to return before it cools, and indeed comes back with the enemy's head while the wine is still warm. These stories establish the outer image: courage, martial prowess, and a near superhuman calm. But Guan Yu's greatness in the cultural imagination comes even more from his inner choices. After one defeat, Liu Bei's forces scatter. Guan Yu finds himself separated from his sworn brother and temporarily under the protection of the warlord Cao Cao. Cao Cao recognizes Guan Yu's talent and wants to win him over. He treats him lavishly, giving him silk robes, gold, and the horse Red Hare. Guan Yu accepts these gifts, but never hides his heart. He says openly, "I serve you because circumstances force me to, but my loyalty belongs to Liu Bei. When I hear where he is, I will leave." This honesty is dangerous, but for Guan Yu, it is non-negotiable. Righteousness means transparency. He will not pretend to change allegiance for comfort or safety. Eventually, he learns Liu Bei's location. He decides to leave. Before going, he writes a farewell letter to Cao Cao and returns most of the gifts he has received. He keeps only Red Hare because he needs a horse to carry out his original loyalty. This act has been praised for centuries as a model of knowing grace and repaying it, while maintaining primary obligation. Guan Yu does not use loyalty as an excuse to forget kindness, nor kindness as an excuse to forget loyalty. On his journey back, he must pass through several strategic checkpoints. This becomes the famous episode of crossing 5 passes and slaying 6 generals. At each pass, local officers try to prevent him from leaving, arguing that to depart is to betray Cao Cao. He argues back that he has clearly declared his intentions, repaid past kindness, and that his prior oath to Liu Bei takes precedence. When no agreement is possible, he fights. Generals die. Guan Yu presses on. This episode forces readers to face a hard question: can violence be justified in service of loyalty and principle? The novel does not give a simple answer, but it portrays Guan Yu's willingness to accept danger rather than live with what he would see as betrayal. Later, after the decisive Battle of Red Cliffs, Cao Cao flees with a small retinue. He eventually comes to a narrow path known as Warong Trail, and finds it blocked by Guan Yu. On paper, this is Guan Yu's chance to end Cao Cao's influence forever. If he kills or captures him, the political landscape of China will change. Cao Cao reminds him of past days, of the kindness he showed, and appeals not to fear or greed, but to gratitude. Guan Yu is torn. On one side is his duty to Liu Bei and to the wider cause. On the other is personal en, the kindness he has received. In the novel, he chooses to let Cao Cao pass. This decision has been debated endlessly. Some see it as a failure of public duty. Others see it as a refusal to instrumentalize gratitude, thus preserving a higher moral integrity. The very existence of this debate is important. It shows that Chinese culture takes conflicts of values seriously. Loyalty is not a mechanical rule. It must constantly be interpreted. Guan Yu's story ends tragically. Stationed at Jingzhou, he is outmaneuvered, cut off, and eventually captured. He is executed, his head and body are separated. But in cultural memory, his defeat becomes a kind of victory. After his death, legends tell of his spirit appearing to monks and officials. He repents of certain prideful acts, vows to protect the Dharma and the just, and is gradually recognized as a tutelary deity. Successive dynasties grant him posthumous titles, first as a marquis, then a duke, then a king, and finally as Emperor Guan, Guan Di. Temples dedicated to him appear across China. He becomes patron of soldiers, but also of merchants, magistrates, sworn brotherhoods, and secret societies. His image is unmistakable: a red face for courage and loyalty, a long beard for gravitas, the green dragon blade in hand, and often eyes that look slightly to the side, as if he is always watching. In shops, his portrait may hang behind the cash register, silently urging honest dealing. In police stations, his statue may stand as a symbol of incorruptible justice. In the halls of some underground brotherhoods, oaths are sworn in his name, showing how the ideal of righteousness can be claimed by both state and counter-state forces. When people burn incense to Guan Gong, they are not simply asking for victory in battle or success in business. They are making a moral statement: may I act as you did. May I not betray my friends. May I not abandon justice for convenience. In this way, Guan Yu functions as a living conscience in Chinese culture. Paired with Sun Wukong, he completes a powerful duo of archetypes: the rebellious energy that must be disciplined and transformed, and the steadfast integrity that must sometimes stand alone against the world. We have now met many figures and systems: Pangu and Nüwa, the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, the 3 pure ones, the Jade Emperor and Queen Mother, the 10 kings of hell, the Shenheijing landscape, Guanyin, Mizu, Sun Wukong, and Guan Yu. The next question is, how do all these pieces fit together? Do they compete? Do they belong to separate religions? Or do they form a single, more fluid whole? In Chinese culture, the answer has usually been, they overlap and interpenetrate. Rather than sharply divided religions, China developed what is often called the 3 teachings: Confucianism, Daoism, and Buddhism, living atop a broad base of folk religion. The phrase Sanjiao Hei means the 3 teachings are one. It does not mean they are identical, but that they are complementary paths. Confucianism provides the ethical and social framework: filial piety, loyalty, ritual propriety, justice, and the ideal of the cultivated person, the Junzi. It is deeply concerned with family, education, and good government. Taoism offers a cosmology and a way of life: alignment with the Tao, non-forcing, balance of yin and yang, and techniques of inner cultivation and longevity. It gives the heavenly bureaucracy and the language of qi, subtle energies, and resonance. Buddhism brings a psychology of suffering and a detailed path of liberation: the 4 noble truths, karma, rebirth, and the bodhisattva ideal of compassionate postponement of personal nirvana to aid others. Chinese folk religion provides the everyday interface: local gods, ancestor worship, divination, feng shui, temple festivals, and practical rituals woven into daily life. All 4 levels share assumptions: that the cosmos is morally structured, that ancestors can influence the living, that unseen spirits interact with human affairs, and that harmony is the ideal relationship between heaven, earth, and humans. If you walk into a traditional temple, especially in southern China or Taiwan, you will often see this syncretism physically. On a single altar, you might find a statue of the Jade Emperor at the top, Guanyin on one side, Mizu in the center, a city god or earth god near the front, and ancestor tablets in a side hall. The temple might be labeled as Daoist, but it houses Buddhist images and Confucian tablets. Devotees do not feel they are crossing religious boundaries. They are simply addressing different functions of the sacred in one place. A person may consult a Daoist priest for feng shui and exorcisms, go to a Buddhist temple to chant sutras for a deceased relative, and follow Confucian rites at home to honor ancestors, all without any sense of contradiction. The emphasis is not on exclusive membership, but on efficacy and appropriateness. Which ritual, which deity, which teaching fits this situation? Confucian values, especially filial piety and social harmony, act as a kind of glue. Filial piety says, respect parents, elders, and ancestors, fulfill obligations, maintain the family line. This logic extends upward. Be loyal to rulers, teachers, benefactors. It also extends outward. Treat others with benevolence, because they too are someone's child. This ethic underlies Guanyu's loyalty and righteousness, Mizu's devotion to saving her father and brothers, Guanyin's compassion for all beings as if they were her children, and even Yu the Great's sacrifice to save the world from floods. Taoism and Buddhism are often interpreted through this Confucian lens. When a Buddhist text speaks of honoring parents, Chinese readers nod. This is filial piety. When Taoist practice emphasizes caring for the body and maintaining family ritual, it resonates with Confucian duty. Taoism and Buddhism, at first glance, can seem opposed. One seeks immortality, the other speaks of emptiness and nirvana. But in China, they become mutually enriching. Taoist internal alchemy gradually shifts from literal elixirs toward inner transformation, influenced by Buddhist ideas of mind and illusion. Buddhist practice in China, especially in Chan and Pure Land traditions, absorbs Taoist language of naturalness, spontaneity, and alignment with the way. In some monasteries, monks study both Taoist texts and Buddhist sutras. In some Taoist temples, the Heart Sutra or Amitabha chants are recited. This is not seen as betrayal of purity. It is seen as drawing water from multiple wells that all tap the same aquifer. Underneath the three teachings lies folk religion, the layer of practice that most people historically lived in day to day. Scholars have described it as a common mountain base, with Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism as three peaks rising from it. Folk religion includes ancestor worship, household altars, local earth gods, village festivals, belief in auspicious days, and everyday divination. These practices existed long before institutional Taoism and Buddhism formed, and they continued after those schools emerged. When Buddhism arrived, it entered a world where people already burned incense to local spirits and cared deeply about ancestors. So Buddhist temples adopted ancestor halls. Taoist priests adopted Buddhist ritual elements. Local gods began to be interpreted as manifestations of bodhisattvas or Taoist immortals. The result is a hybrid ecosystem. Intellectually, thinkers can distinguish Taoist and Buddhist doctrines. Practically, villagers often do not separate them. They live inside a single blended universe where different names and rituals address different layers of the same reality. One way to interpret this syncretism is as adaptive wisdom. Instead of fighting over exclusive truth, Chinese culture often assumes that multiple perspectives can all contain valid insights. This has allowed the civilization to absorb a foreign religion like Buddhism, reconcile it with native Taoism and Confucianism, and keep folk practices alive without requiring ordinary people to choose one brand. The downside is that this can blur boundaries and sometimes make critical reform harder. But the upside is a long-lasting, flexible religious culture that can bend without breaking. Finally, let us step back and ask, what deeper values do all these myths express? And where do these values shine, or cast shadows, in actual life? One of the most important values is harmony, Harmony appears in many forms: harmony between heaven and earth, between ruler and subject, between parent and child, between different elements of the self. In the yin-yang symbol, opposites are not enemies. They are complements. Each contains a seed of the other. Balance, not total victory, is the ideal. Pangu's separation of heaven and earth creates an ordered space where things can live. Nüwa's repair of the sky restores balance after catastrophe. Yu the Great tames the flood not by blocking water, but by giving it proper channels. These stories teach: do not seek to destroy what opposes you, seek to rebalance it. This can be a profound strength. It encourages compromise, searching for win-win solutions, and avoiding extremes. In diplomacy, business, and family life, this ethos can reduce conflict and support long-term relationships. The shadow side is that harmony can be misused as a way to avoid necessary confrontation. People may say, "Don't rock the boat," even when injustice needs to be challenged. Silence can be mistaken for harmony, and real problems may be suppressed rather than resolved. Another central value is filial piety, Shao, combined with compassion, Si. Filial piety teaches respect, care, and obedience toward parents and ancestors. It is considered the root of other virtues. If a person cannot be good to their own parents, how can they be good to strangers or to society? This value appears in myths. Shun remains filial despite abusive parents. Mizu risks herself to save her father and brothers. Guanyin is imagined as a mother to all beings. Ancestral spirits are honored and consulted in family rituals. Compassion broadens filial piety outward. If one truly understands the love between parent and child, one can see every being as someone's child, and extend care beyond one's own family. This combination has many strengths. It creates strong family bonds, encourages care for the elderly, and can motivate social safety nets and intergenerational support. But there are shadows. Filial piety can be distorted into rigid hierarchy and emotional pressure. Children may feel obligated to endure harmful situations in the name of obedience. Individual needs or mental health can be sacrificed to preserve a certain image of family harmony. The mythology itself sometimes offers correctives. Stories of unjust parents, cruel rulers, and eventual divine retribution suggest that authority must also be worthy. Respect is not supposed to be blind. A third cluster of values involves righteousness, Yi, loyalty, Zhang, and a strong sense of justice. Guan Yu is the classic embodiment. He shows loyalty to sworn brothers, gratitude to benefactors, and a willingness to die rather than betray core commitments. The 10 kings of hell represent justice beyond human courts. They reinforce the conviction that no crime goes unseen, even if earthly authorities fail. The mandate of heaven concept similarly insists that rulers who become corrupt will eventually lose legitimacy. Natural disasters and social unrest are interpreted as signs that heaven has withdrawn its support. The strength here is a deep moral seriousness. Actions are not morally neutral. There is an order, and to violate it will, sooner or later, have consequences. The shadow is that this can feed fatalism or victim blaming. If someone suffers, people may say, it must be their karma, even when the suffering is clearly caused by unjust systems, not personal vice. It can also encourage passivity. Instead of changing unjust structures, people wait for heaven or the 10 kings to fix it. Another defining feature of Chinese mythic values is comfort with hierarchy and bureaucracy. The Jade Emperor's court, the rank-ordered gods, the 10 courts of hell, all mirror imperial administration. This mapping teaches that the cosmos is ordered. Each role has duties. Information flows along channels. Power is structured, not arbitrary. The strength is organizational. It encourages clear roles, division of labor, and collective responsibility. Everyone knows where they fit and to whom they are accountable. The danger is rigidity. Hierarchy can become self-justifying. People in lower positions may find it hard to challenge abuse, because this is the order of heaven and earth. Innovation can be slowed if every change must move through many levels. Again, stories sometimes counterbalance this. Sun Wukong's havoc in heaven, Justice Bao becoming a judge in both worlds, and the possibility of Jade Emperors being replaced after vast cycles all hint that hierarchies can and must be corrected when they drift away from the Tao. At the popular level, these values sometimes solidify into what outsiders call superstitions, beliefs and practices that may lack rational basis but carry emotional and cultural weight. Examples include choosing auspicious days for weddings or business openings, consulting oracles before major decisions, worrying about unlucky numbers, or fearing ghosts in certain months. Many of these practices come from real intuitions, that timing matters, that decisions have ripples, that the dead and the living remain connected. But when taken to extremes, they can paralyze decision-making. A person might delay needed surgery because the date is unlucky, or refuse to move into a safe home because the door faces an inauspicious direction, even when practical conditions are good. In some cases, superstitious fear can be exploited. Fortune tellers or ritual specialists might use elaborate threats to sell expensive services. The challenge is to distinguish between genuine cultural wisdom, like paying attention to seasonal cycles, designing buildings in harmony with environment, or using ritual to mark life transitions, and habits of fear that limit human freedom. In modern China and in global Chinese communities, these values continue to evolve. Some people embrace them explicitly, invoking harmony, filial piety, and righteousness as anchors in a fast-changing world. Others critique their rigid forms, especially where they have justified gender inequality, authoritarian politics, or silence about suffering. Contemporary artists, writers, and filmmakers retell old myths with new emphasis, portraying Nüwa as a rebel challenging unjust expectations, showing Guanyin as an active, struggling figure, reimagining Sun Wukong's rebellion as a metaphor for creative resistance rather than mere disobedience. In doing so, they are not simply discarding tradition. They are arguing with it, using its own symbols to ask new questions. What does harmony mean in an era of inequality? What does filial piety mean when parents and children live in radically different worlds? What does righteousness look like in a globalized economy? The myths we have explored, of creation and flood control, of heavenly courts and hellish prisons, of mountain spirits, sea goddesses, monkey kings, and warrior gods, are not just entertaining stories. They are mirrors. They reflect how Chinese civilization has wrestled with the biggest questions: how to live in a changing world, how to balance order and freedom, how to honor the past while facing the future, how to connect personal virtue with cosmic structure. If there is one thread running through it all, it might be this: Seek balance without becoming passive. Seek loyalty without becoming blind. Seek reverence without surrendering critical thought. And seek compassion that is both tender and clear-seeing. These myths do not demand that we believe every detail literally. They invite us to enter a conversation with our ancestors, with our own hearts, and with the vast, mysterious order of things we call heaven and earth. Thank you for journeying through this tapestry.